Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel, Musical Moments with Marta. My name is Marta and I am here to continue with the Vivaldi seasons. This is summer and this is part of the Musical Solutions series that I have started several months ago, almost at least 6 months ago. And I've been going through many different works, including Sarasate, Bach, Mozart, Paganini, Tchaikovsky, and now we're working through Vivaldi's seasons. So this is summer, and we just concluded doing the other two movements. So this is the third movement, Presto, and as you have probably heard, these seasons concertos are based on poems that Vivaldi most likely wrote himself, and there is always a story behind those poems. So this particular movement is very famous for its stormy character, and it's the words that are written at the beginning is, in translation, violent summer weather. So we're dealing with hail and thunderstorm and lightning, and the music expresses it all beautifully. So I hope you will enjoy this, and please share, like and subscribe these videos to these videos if you like them. So let's get started. So this is Presto. We are in G minor. This is in 3/4, so we have 16th notes. By the way, the edition that I'm using is the Bernreiter edition from 2000, and it is edited by Christopher Hogwood. And there are, of course, because it's Bernreiter, it's close to original scoring, and there aren't that many bowings here, for example, or dynamics. So we as performers, we add a lot of these things ourselves to make sure that the music is alive and beautiful. So here is the opening, Presto. We have a rest and a fermata for the whole measure. So everybody knows this beginning, it's a lot of fun. There's no dynamic written there, let's say forte, fortissimo, however excited you want to get at this opening. The whole orchestra plays this, so we don't have to force it, but there should be some energy in here. I would put accents on each measure, just so we hear those first notes. We have a little melody going up, a little scale up on top. And then you don't have to work as hard on the repeated notes, especially since everybody else is playing it as well. But now, starting in measure 10, now we have to do some finger work finally. And we have some scales. So this is still G minor. So this is all still first position. But one thing about Vivaldi I find is that sometimes students especially take it for granted that it's in first position, or that it's just Vivaldi and not Tchaikovsky, and they play out of tune by not knowing what chords or scales they're playing. So be sure that you know and you practice your scales and arpeggios and double stops every day so that you can play these scales with ease. And even if you practice scales, you still have to practice these particular scales because they can be quite different. As you will see in a little bit, we have some scales that are a little surprising. You would expect a sharp, but it's not. It's a natural, etc., etc. So measure 10, it starts on the D. And the other thing about Vivaldi is that it's virtuosic, so that means that it requires brilliance and clarity and great coordination between hands. So if you have trouble with the coordination between hands, especially when it is separate bows, on the slur it's the left hand that has to work for most part, but in separate notes both hands have to be coordinated. So one way to remedy it is to practice it slurred as well. So for example, at measure 10, that would be one way you could practice. so that we don't have to deal with as much. We're only dealing with maybe a string crossing, and then, and if you play an open string, which I'm demonstrating right now, then you can just play like I just played, bowing it that way, all the way to the open string, and then the next string, and the next string. So that gives you kind of an easy little pattern. Now, the fingerings, the intervals are a little bit different on each string. So on the A string we have 2 whole steps, and then a half step. Here we have half step, whole step, whole step. And here you have a whole step, half step, whole step. So each string has different steps. So be sure you're sure about that as well. Then in measure 12, so before you separate, and then you have to deal with string crossings and the coordination with the left hand, practice with rhythms, different rhythms, practice slurred. Don't just start going fast and have a bad coordination. So just keep that in mind. Then measure 14, we have now gone up to the E string. Now we have to climb to 3rd position. So don't take this for granted. Again, we have an E flat, B flat, because we're still in G minor, even though we're starting on a D. Then we have F sharp. And it's interesting because you could think of this as a D major scale almost, because we have, except we have B flat and C, which does not exist in D major, right? So it is actually a G minor, which when we arrive in measure 17, we're on a G. So you can go backwards now. See it? So there will be an octave. Now you see I have an F sharp and an E natural. If you know anything about music theory, that is called melodic minor. But only going up, because going down, it should actually, the sharp should get erased, and then it should be E flat. But Vivaldi plays around with it, kind of like a joke almost. So instead of going, this would be an actual melodic G minor. Okay, so going down, the sharp gets erased, and then E become E flat. But with Vivaldi, we are doing it just like it would be going up. So I probably confused you here, but the point is that you've got to know what scale you're playing. Even if you don't know what to name it, be aware of where the half steps are. Usually where the half steps are, it's either a leading tone, so above the half step usually is the note that the scale is. So if we have an F sharp, in measure 16, most likely G is the key or scale, right? So that's just some theory for you. And then measure 18, we have the same scale. Then we have these little, those are so much fun. But you have to be nice and supple here and don't try to do everything with your elbow. So see how I only move this part here. I don't go, I don't do that. That would be way too much wasted energy, right? So that's why it's important that your wrist is not too floppy, but also not rigid, right? You don't want to lock your wrist. Or your fingers. Your fingers can be kind of firm, because you don't want them to be bouncing around too much here either, because this is still détaché. We're not bouncing the bow too much. If it wants to bounce, let it bounce, but I wouldn't try to bounce it. In fact, in this movement there's a lot of détaché simply because it is a loud, kind of a loud movement, because it's a storm. So you don't want to be too loose. You want to have a firm grip. All right, so then measure 21, we have a scale. Another one of those scales with the E and F sharp, even though we have an E flat at the key signature. But so again, this is part of a G minor melodic scale. If I was to replace the D with a G in measure 21, it would be like the, and the A is kind of a bonus. So make sure you know that scale. And then measure 22, it repeats. So now, the tricky part here is to play with the orchestra or accompaniment of some sort, piano, keyboard. You're bouncing off of that first beat. So your left hand has to be nice and light, yeah? So then measure 23. It's still G minor, but we have an E flat has been placed back in, and we call this G minor harmonic minor, because it has that 6th degree E flat still remains, but then the 7th degree of the scale is the F sharp, so we have that augmented step, right? Augmented second. In measure 23, so if it was a G minor, full G minor scale, there will be, right? But it's only, and keeps going. So it's a little bit different, but it's still part of that scale. And the next measure, he goes back to E natural in measure 24. Okay, then 26, back, same as we had in 22. And then like 23, again. So he repeats those scales a little bit of a pattern, right? All right, and then I would kind of grow with that a little bit, and then the peak is in measure 29. Nice to diminuendo there, and then start from nothing. But so here, measure 29, you have to deal with string crossings. And also the left hand is playing arpeggios, so be ready for those, yes? G minor arpeggio. So I would practice those slurred. Up and down. Then the next measure, measure 30. Measure 31. Okay, so that would be a very good exercise for you, so that once you have to play them all in a row, it will be much easier. Okay, measure 32 is now one of my favorite parts. Now, those of you who've watched my other videos with this piece and other movements, we were talking about going up, down, up, down, up, down, when you crossing strings from the upper string to the lower string. Like if it was B to a G, I would start at that bow. Instead of, right, it's like kind of awkward. But in this case, we start on the bottom. So we can do that, and the bow may bounce a little bit, right? Measure 32, I just give like a little pulse, and this is, in my opinion, the softest section right there. So kind of anticipatory, like it's anticipating something. But you've got to make sure your left hand is ready for that interval. So I would practice them as double stops as well. Then measure 34. Then I go to second position. Then measure 37. And we have now modulated to a D minor. D minor, another melodic. He likes melodic D minor. Melodic means that it's a minor scale with 6th and 7th degrees raised on the way up. And then when you come back, you remove the 7th and 6th degrees half a step, so it goes back down half step down. Okay, so like I said, 32 is a really cool place when you get comfortable with crossing strings. Very, very little motion there. You can play it on the string, but it's just like a little tiny little circle with the right hand. And then as you progress and get louder, you can get more and more on the string and more bow. And this part here brings around the solo part, because up till now it all has been with the orchestra. So this is the challenging part for the soloist. Okay, and then so we have D minor. I go up to third position there. And here you can either go, which I often do, just third position, and then I play harmonic on the E. Harmonics. If you can play harmonics here, that's best. Try to play a fifth up there, it's nearly impossible. I don't know if people do that. That takes a little bit of time to place that. So harmonics is a really good solution. So you can see in measure 40 it says solo. So this is where I started. So we have A major. Or you could start on the A string with the harmonic on that high A. If you feel comfortable being up in, what is it, 7th position. In any case, you want to be up there for the A's, and then you have an open D. So again here, utilize your arm. Make sure you're not just wobbling your whole elbow, your entire arm. Well, actually, in this one, it is more allowable than some other parts, but still be aware of how much of the arm you're using. Having trouble with that one today. Now this one you cannot play harmonic, so make sure, just like in some other places I was explaining, make sure your finger is nice and flat on the pad to play that fifth in measure 48. Okay. Then you have to climb back up. And there are probably other fingerings that are good as well. I start on the 4th finger. There's somebody wrote E flat in there, the original part, but I played with an E natural, which I've mostly felt fits better. A lot of people do it that way, so. So I stay up there. I think most people do. And then we have a section that different people play differently. You could do it separate. So it takes time to warm up on this, but I would practice just the G string. So I'm in 5th position, 6th position on the G string. So this is measure 51, which is kind of a notorious little section, because it doesn't always speak that great, but you could go down to it too, and then 1. So I slur these, and this part is not really clear as to what he meant, whether he meant the top voice to be separate. I think he may have, but I've also heard it slurred. I've always liked it more slurred. It has kind of like a stereo effect, especially with that open D. But it's not easy. Part of the difficulty is that when you're playing with an open D and then you have to play up on G string, you have to move your hand way up to clear that open D. So that's really one big challenge. So that's why practicing just the G string at first is a good idea. And then we arrive at Tutti at 55. So I go ta 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 ta, nice crescendo. So a lot of keys. It goes through a lot of keys. So be sure you check all those arpeggios, and also lots of string crossings. Kind of a heavy spiccato. Whole arm spiccato, right? Getting to measure 64. So we have now separate scales, which is different from, let's say, measure 21. So it's that coordination again. We have to practice, I would practice a slur. You can do different ways on one string. So there's different ways to practice this to make sure that your left hand is all aware of all the intervals. And then you can slowly start doing rhythms. Then you can reverse. And then finally, just make sure that the left hand and the right hand are coordinated well. Measure 67. So this one is a little tricky because you have that fifth going on in the second measure. And the first finger has to go up and up and down, up and down. Then we have B natural. And then you need to probably shift up to third position at that point. Or a little bit earlier if you wish, but I shift on the third beat of measure 69. So then I can be on this C octave. Again, accent and then let go. Don't try to work through every single note as the same way. Always give an impulse. Impulses are so important. Okay, then going on to measure 74, which is another interesting section for tone production and double stops. So I do the bowing sitar on the bottom. Well, actually, the top note is just supposedly a held note, but you can't really hold it because you're doing on the bottom. So your bow is just going to go back and forth. But just make them as smooth as you can. So there's some intonation to work there. Double stops. I would practice, just the voice. So you know how far you're shifting. Just do the bottom voice. And then you can slowly add. You could even just do, or yeah, because you have two intervals. You have a third, then you have a fifth. So make sure you tune those really well. Measure 74, and then all the other measures are similar, just different chords, right? Measure 79, we now have a sequence. I just love those harmonies. Vivaldi is so much fun. It's tricky because the sequences are not always so easy. You have to change your hand position for every chord, but it's just so beautiful how he places all those sequences. So sequence, as you may be aware, is when we have a pattern or melody or like a fragment, then that it's repeated a step higher or a third higher or a third lower or a step lower, whatever it is, but it's repeated in it's exactly the same except it's on a different note. So you could have the same rhythm, you could have the same intervals, patterns, like a melody, the same melody. Let's say it's one measure melody, and then it repeats one note higher, and then another note higher. So this is a sequence here, very typical of Vivaldi. And this one goes up pretty high, so you have to keep your 3-octave scales for sure going. So we go measure 79. We start in first position, go up, then I have to go to a 4. We have an E flat chord, then we stay there, we keep going to the next one. I'm gonna go to a 3, so that again on the next arpeggio I can also have the 4th finger. So this is F major. The next one, I'm gonna do a half step here, a slide here on the half step. So we're now in measure 83 on the 2nd beat. So let's see. So we're in 5th position in measure 83. Like right here, I'm gonna shift, and then we're in G major. Back to C minor. And actually, where it says Tutti in measure 85, I do not play that measure. I don't know, it just doesn't make sense to me to be chopping off the top note and then jumping down. So I just finish. I finish there, and then I go to 86. You can choose to do that or not. I'm just being a little flexible for the sake of music. 86. So we are now in 3rd position for that. Measure 86 is 3rd position. So again, whenever you get a chance, practice double stops, because there's so many of these string crossings in this piece, especially in this movement. There's tons of those. It's a great opportunity to practice your double stops. So here's 86. That's perfect to do that. And then the 1st finger on the next bar on the B. Now it's gonna be B flat. Another one on A. Then A flat. Then we're open. So again, these little points that let the other repeated notes go. Don't work too hard on sometimes you can get carried away with trying to play every note exactly the same, but no. So I do little crescendos, as you probably noticed, in measure 87, 89, 91, 93, and 95. I make crescendos into that next chord change. Again, another sequence, right? He goes through sequences like crazy, like socks. So 97 is solo again. I shift up there because we have to keep that relationship to the open D, so we want to stay on the A string. So measure 99, I'm gonna go E flat, then I'm gonna shift up to 5th position, then I'm gonna shift again, and here the A is actually a harmonic, so it's a nice little change, nice little check for you to check the intonation. B flat. So in measure 101, we are playing a high D on the A string. I don't think there's other way to do it really. So you gotta be on the A string, and then we're gonna go join the Tutti. Join everybody. So we're going to go back down to first position. And this you've already seen before in measure 10. So same. Okay, so you've seen that section before, 101 through 108. We had that in measure 10, like I said. And then we have another solo. Again, swells. This is storm, so you can have some fun. But make sure you're listening to the top. And be as economical as you can with these string crossings. So my elbow is kind of on the middle string, yes? It's not here, it's not there, it's on the middle. So it's on the D string. Think of it as that. Right, so, and then you can go very, very fast. Okay, and then measure, we're almost done, measure 113. Sorry, I think I played the wrong note there. A natural, and measure 113. And I wrote a flat, oh my goodness. A natural, a natural. So in 114, I shift back down because I'm in third position in 113. E flat, F sharp, and then F natural, and then F sharp. Boy, he goes crazy with those F sharps, E flats, E naturals. No, E natural, yes, E natural here also at the end of 114. Now this is a fun little part, and there are different interpretations of the notes here as well. So I go, I do F natural the first time, and then F sharp the second time. I like that. I don't know. I like changing there. And the first F natural in 117 is in parentheses, but I really like that F natural there. And the bow is kind of like choppy, right? It's kind of a little crazy there. Don't get too tight, but it is intense, right? So. Voila. So again, just like in the first movement, I kind of slow down just a tiny bit before the last note and then make a break and play the last note all by itself. I like that effect. Everybody has their own little idea of what it should sound like. So thank you very much for watching. I hope this was helpful. It was fun for me. And again, there will be videos here on both sides. I'm sure that will interest you. Vivaldi, maybe some other concerti. I have Tchaikovsky concerto as well that I go through, and I'll be going through more concertos. So look for those videos coming up in the next few months and hopefully years. And thank you again for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe. And I'll see you on the next